based on that. Oh,
Sorry, Tony, I forgot to hit
you're
record.
good. You're good. So Leon County, well, so DEP, this Wakulla B map was put in place, required all counties that were included in these B maps, which there's multiple B maps throughout the state, but we're just focusing on Wakulla Springs. They required each county to put together a facility response plan. So this is the county's basically response to putting that response plan in place. And Leon County selected us as the prime contractor to work together with them to put this response plan in place. Now we are looking at the Wakulla B map only requires us to look at the PFA, or the priority focus area. The county decided to look at the entire county instead of just that, but just focusing on the PFA. In the event that if DEP ever amended that PFA or expanded that area, essentially the county would already have all the information needed to address any change from DEP and not have to readdress this plan or amend it as part of DEP or the state's amendment. So the project task. So this project was broken up into 8 individual tasks. The first 4 tasks, or well, actually the first 3 tasks were developing criteria for how we were going to implement some of these advanced treatment scenarios. The first task was developing a nitrogen reduction score. And in that task, what we looked at was more of the geological type data across the county, whether that be soil conditions, the presence of a confining or a semi-confining layer, basically a clay layer underneath the sand that would slow down any nitrogen released on the surface before it got into the underlying groundwater. Density of parcels, size of parcels. We looked at all this individual information and defined basically a formula for taking that data and providing a score, which we call the nitrogen reduction score for each individual parcel across the county. Now that score can kind of be thought of as a risk assessment, or the risk of any nitrogen released on the surface making it directly or impacting the underlying groundwater. So task 2 was the quantitative cost effectiveness. And at this point, we looked at the individual treatment technologies. We looked at 4 different technologies, actually 5 different groups of technologies. And we'll kind of go into those in a little bit more detail when we go into the task 5 analysis. But we're basically looking at each of those different technologies and ranking them based on the cost effectiveness for nitrogen reduction and what was going to be the most cost effective option for reducing nitrogen per dollar. What was the best cost benefit ratio there? Task 3 was identifying other factors, other mitigating factors that may limit a particular technology from being used on a parcel, whether that be property size, development code, rules and regulations, the presence of easements, wetlands, karst features that may be present on the property. So we took each of those different criterias and found results at the end of each of those tasks. And then task 4 was taking each of those first 3 tasks, the reports that were generated from each of those tasks, and presenting that in the public presentations. We did complete an initial public meeting with some of the primary stakeholders, Wakulla Springs Alliance, Leon County, and I think DEP also was in attendance in that first round of meetings. And then we followed that up with public meetings, where we looked at all reports and all information gathered as part of tasks 1 through 3. There were a total of 5 public meetings, 4 in person in different locations throughout the county, and 1 webinar for people that could not attend in person. Now, The area specific evaluation, task 5 and 6, we'll go into a little bit more detail on each of those in just a second. Task 7 is what we are currently doing right now. That is our public meetings, discussing task 1 through 4, but primarily task 5 and 6. And then following task 7, we would go into the presentation to the Board of County Commissioners. So going into task 5, this is our implementation scenario for alternate wastewater treatment systems. So as we know, all households release wastewater in some form or fashion, and all wastewater in some regard has nitrogen present within it. The typical septic tanks that are in most people's houses do not reduce nitrogen, never were intended to reduce nitrogen concentrations. In order to reduce nitrogen, we have to look at some more advanced treatment options. So some of those systems that we looked at were the aerobic treatment units, ATUs. They are considered a more active type of system. They are primarily focused within the septic tank itself, not in the drain field, and normally include the addition of air or some type of pumping mechanism to circulate flow and to promote nitrogen reduction within the tank prior to drain field distribution. Performance-based treatment systems are very similar to the aerobic treatment units, with the exception of they do require an engineering sign and seal, and they are designed by an engineer, so they are required to meet a certain, basically when the engineer designs that system, they will certify a certain treatment reduction that system will be required to meet. The in-ground nitrogen reducing biofilters, or INRBs, they are more passive in nature. They primarily work within the drain field themselves, and they essentially they add a layer of mulch or organic matter underneath the drain field to promote a bacterial presence that would further reduce nitrogen prior to absorption into the groundwater. Now, cluster systems are more of a treatment concept. They can utilize any of the above mentioned technologies, but it would essentially, you would scale up one of those technologies and attach multiple homes to that particular system, essentially making a cluster type of system. Now, these systems have benefits and and issues with them as well. Primary issue is when you do a cluster system, essentially you have 16 different property owners that are all relying on a single unit for treatment. So the question comes, who is the responsible party for maintenance and operation? If a failure occurs, who is the responsible party to replace or repair that system? So normally you have to either include this as part of an HOA or have some other entity that would be created when these cluster systems are put in place to govern that system. And the last system would be a central sewer, whether gravity or pressure in nature. So kind of going a little bit more, kind of some of the requirements of each of those types of systems. So like I said earlier, the aerobic treatment units and performance-based treatment systems, they both require operating permits from the Department of Health. They both require periodic inspections to be completed. The primary difference goes into the requirement of an engineering design, which the performance-based systems do, and the ATUs or aerobic treatment units do not. The INRBs do not require an operating permit. They do require to be permitted, but not an operating permit. They do not require inspections, and depending on the type of INRB that is installed, whether it is lined or unlined, an engineering design may be or may not be required. And since cluster systems are basically any of the above technologies and they tie to multiple homes, they do require the operating permit, periodic inspections, and an engineering design. So central sewer in Leon County, the two primary service providers are the city of Tallahassee and Talcon Electric. And the two primary options for, or I say options, but two primary methodologies for sewer are gravity and pressure. And sometimes you have a combination of both of those types of systems in place. Gravity systems are normally cheaper in nature to install, but in areas where distance or elevation becomes an issue, a lift station is normally required with the additional force main. So typically, if you have a pressure system, that also includes gravity in some nature, but sometimes you can utilize a gravity-only system. So identifying potential retrofit options. What we've done as part of this project is develop a graphical interface system, or a GIS system, similar to that of a Google Earth, that takes in the data from each of the earlier tasks, task 1, 2, and 3, and combines them within the system to allow us to look at individual parcels across the county. Now, from task 1, we took the nitrogen reduction score, which was our risk assessment. Task 2, we looked at the cost that were basically prioritizing what type of technologies were available. And task 3, we took some of the mitigating criteria from that report to determine what treatment options were available for a particular parcel, and then ranked those as the most feasible to the least feasible for a particular parcel. Following the selection of each parcel's technology, that we then identified target areas, or large contiguous areas that had either similar treatment technologies or similar location, similar parcel size, just to essentially, when these projects move forward, and if it is a county sponsored project or a state funded project, then that would allow those particular areas to be targeted. Say target area 1, which I'll show you a target area map on the next slide. Say target area 1 would include a few hundred parcels. It's easier to identify a target area than it is to identify 1,000 different parcels. So the target areas are there just for ease of use and defining a project limits in the future. Now, all areas within 2,000 feet of existing central sewer, they are within target areas, and they would be required to be tied to central sewer in the future. Other target areas that are outside of a defined target area, those recommended technologies, they can vary from parcel to parcel based on site specific information, because this system is based on purely empirical data. It is not based on any site observations directly. So once a parcel is, say a project is started on a particular parcel, then that parcel technology may be deemed unsuitable to do it based on site visits. So there are a preferred treatment, and then there are secondary treatment options as well. So this is the target area map, and the line defined, the line or the area defined with the dark red line, that is the priority focus area. And the line defined in yellow, or the area defined in yellow with the black dots, that is the primary spring protection zone. The priority focus area is the area that was defined as part of the Wakulla B map. The line defined in yellow, or the primary spring protection zone, is a zone that was defined within the Leon County Comprehensive Plan prior to the Wakulla B map being created. And it essentially has some of the same limitations, but it was put in place prior to the Wakulla B map for the purpose of limiting some of the larger developments that may occur with the earlier knowledge that this was coming. So it was a way to kind of, prematurely, or not prematurely, but limit some of these developments that would essentially have to be retrofitted in the future prior to the Wakulla B map being put in place. Now, the target areas that we defined are in light red or pinkish colored and dark gray. The dark gray target areas primarily to the north and northeast. There are some to the south as well, but those are areas defined within the City of Tallahassee's 2035 Master Sewer Plan. The City of Tallahassee does update that plan periodically, and it is essentially where they plan to expand their sewer or their central sewer system within the next 25, or I think it's 20 years, 15 to 20 years. But that plan that we're utilizing is the most recent plan, and it is all the way through the 2035 timeframe. The areas in light pink are the areas we define that are outside of those predefined target areas. Now, the areas that are hatched with a crosshatch that are defined as parcels outside the target area, those are primarily areas that are either in conservation easements, national forest, or property that is not currently within a, it's parcels outside of our defined target areas, but primarily in the south, that area is the Apalachicola National Forest or undevelopable land at this point. So the requirements as part of Task 5. So due to the state BMAP requirements, all the existing septic tanks inside that primary focus area must be converted to one of these advanced treatment systems by 2040. These parcels are included in the target areas. And on our map, we have, like I said earlier, the primary treatment, and then we also have a secondary treatment. And I'll show you those maps in just a second as well. And then with areas within the primary spring protection zone, or PSPZ as it's defined on this slide, that same criteria would follow in place there as well. They would make the recommendations that all septic systems change over to one of these advanced treatment systems within that same time frame. So the current developed parcels inside these two zones, the primary springs protection zone and the primary focus area, are defined on this map here. They are primarily to the south of the county. There are some up around the airport, south of or on the southwest side of the City of Tallahassee city limits. But primarily it is between Crawfordville Highway and 363, which is the road that goes down to Woodville, which I think is Woodville Highway. The areas defined in light blue are what we're classifying as INRBs as the primary focus. Their areas defined in yellow are the performance-based systems or aerobic treatment units, and those defined in the bright red primary areas up next to the airport is the areas defined for sewer. So what are the recommendations? So recommendations in areas, target areas at this time outside of the PFA, they are not required to retrofit. This plan is primarily focused on the areas inside the PFA or inside the primary spring protection zone. Now, if in the future DEP does amend the primary focus area due to not meeting certain target goals that are defined within the McCullough BMAP, then that primary focus area could expand, and that would essentially or potentially impact more properties than is currently defined. Now, as we stated earlier, some of those target areas we have defined earlier in the dark gray are part of the City of Tallahassee 2035 Master Sewer Plan, and they are not tied to our 2040 plan, but most likely will see expansion or those projects moving forward by 2035 to meet their own internal deadlines and schedules. So if we focus in on the target areas, so this is a zoomed in view of the southeast end of Leon County. You can see the dark red line, more maroon in this picture. That is the priority focus area. You can see Lake Munson to the northwest of this map, Crawfordville Highway. You can see Woodville on the south end, and Highway 27 on the northeast. So the areas defined in the dark maroon are the septic to sewer projects that are either in place, currently being completed, or in the future plans for the master sewer plan. The areas defined in blue, again, are the INRBs. Yellow is the priority, the performance-based systems or the aerobic treatment units, and the light red, which primarily on this one is area number 7, northwest of Lake Munson, is the area we have defined as sewer. This is the southwest portion of that same map. You can see Lake Munson on the far east, priority focus area 7 on the northeast side of the airport. There are 2 additional sewer target areas off of Highway 27 and Highway 20. And then due to a high level of density and some higher nitrogen reduction scores, the area defined on Highway 20 on the west side of the map, area 10, was also flagged as a potential nitrogen retrofit area. In the northwest, the primary target areas are included in the 2035 master sewer plan, all those defined in light red. The only area we define outside of those is a subdivision northwest of Lake Jackson off Highway 27, target area 16, which is a combination of INRBs and performance-based treatment units. And then as we progress to the northeast, all of these areas are included in the 2035 master sewer plan. And you can see Thomasville Road and Capitol Circle with Interstate 10 running through the center. And then Highway 90 kind of crossing out near on the central east side of the map. So recommendations for new development. Now, what we kind of defined was existing development or existing parcels that are already developed. So any new development would be required to meet the same criteria. They would be required to install one of the advanced wastewater treatment systems if they are within the PFA or the primary spring protection zone. They would also be required to connect to central sewer if they are within 2,000 feet. That is a current Leon County Development Code. That is not a requirement of this plan, but it is part of the current code that's in place. Areas of higher development density within these areas that are currently not developed, we would recommend that they consider the use of cluster systems. These systems are more applicable to new development than to retrofit type systems, due to the requirement for having a piece of property that is not currently developed for the proposed system to be constructed at. And this could easily be built into a subdivision with a managing entity such as an HOA being put in place at that time. So on to task 6. This is the nitrogen reductions. This is our estimated nitrogen reduction values if this plan were to be utilized in full. So the BMAP includes these remediation plans to address nitrogen contributions from existing septic systems in the PFA. So if we were to utilize all the parcels defined that are currently developed within the PFA and convert those over to these advanced treatment systems, then we're looking at that estimated nitrogen reduction value. Now, within the Wakulla BMAP, DEP did define a range of nitrogen reduction that they would like to see, or that they are estimating would meet their target goals within the Wakulla Springs. And that range is, the lower end of that range is if all septic systems within the PFA convert to one of the advanced treatment systems, meeting a minimum nitrogen reduction of, I think, 50%, with the upper range being if all systems within that PFA converted to or tied into central sewer. Now, part of the issue that comes into play with this is the range that DEP or that the BMAP defined is for the entire priority focus area. Now, that priority focus area is in Leon County, but it also extends down into McCullough County. So what we have done, and we have spoken to DEP on this as well, is we have looked at the total number of septic tanks within that priority focus area that are in Leon County. And then we have also looked at the total number of septic tanks within the entire priority focus area. Now, Leon County has approximately 20% of those systems. So we utilize 20% of the range that is defined within the BMAP as our target nitrogen goals. Now, so the other thing that comes into play too is in the process of developing the McCullough BMAP, DEP has a particular set of calculations and methodology for defining that nitrogen reduction. As part of this plan, we utilize that same methodology in our calculations so that the numbers that we are defining are calculated in the same manner that DEP is requiring as far as the BMAP. So they should be easily, or they should be directly comparable. Now, that range that we're looking at from DEP within the McCullough BMAP is approximately, and I'm just going to approximate these numbers, but it's 15,500 pounds of total nitrogen per year on the low end to, if I remember correctly, it's 21,500 pounds per nitrogen per year on the upper range. So based on our plan, our total reduction is approximately 17,500 pounds of nitrogen per year, which is kind of right in the middle of that area. So that is for estimating to convert 2,438 septic systems. That's how many we identified within that priority focus area that are located within Leon County. Now, each of those parcels or each of those property owners would be required, sort of as we stated earlier, would be required to retrofit to one of these advanced treatment systems by the 2040 deadline that's within the BMAP or within the McCullough BMAP. Now, outside of the primary focus area, if the additional recommendations that we have defined were utilized and these parcels outside that PFA were to convert to the advanced treatment systems like we defined in the plan, there is an additional little over 33,000 pounds of nitrogen per year that could be removed. That would also include an additional 7,630 septic tanks. So in all, we could meet a reduction if the county applied this across the, applied this plan across the entire county. You could get somewhere up in the range of 50,000 pounds per total nitrogen per year. But those areas outside that PFA are not required as part of the BMAP or as part of the current Leon County code. But they could be implemented if, such as that priority focus area were amended and expanded, or if other opportunities arise due to grant funding or nitrogen reduction projects that did come into play. So like I said early in the plan, when we first started this slide, this is assuming that all septic systems in those target areas are retrofitted. So we'll go on to the next steps. So right now we are completing task 7, which is the last round of public meetings. We would ask that all comments be either emailed or supplied to Leon County in some written form or fashion so that we can incorporate those comments directly into our task 7 report. If you have reviewed the task 4 report, you would see that we took a similar approach in that. We have our task 4 report, and then we have the comments that were received directly from either stakeholders. The state was also, we received comments from the state. Those are also included in that report, and individual property owners that attended some of those public meetings provided comments to us as well. And so if you look at the task 4 report, you will see those comments as they were provided to us with our response to how those comments were either addressed or justification for why we did what we did in a certain part of the report. Following those comments being received and us addressing those comments, we will prepare the final Project 7 report that will be submitted to the county for review and comment. And then following acceptance of the Task 7 report, we would then be presenting to the Leon County Board of County Commissioners. That will be in December 13th, if I remember correctly. And then following that, we would, I think in March, we would be submitting to the Blueprint IA, a city intramural or intergovernmental agency. They did help, they did supply they partially supplied funding for this project, as well as DEP has supplied another portion of the funding for this project. If we received any comments from the Blueprint IA, we would bring that back to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval. Following approval from the Board of County Commissioners, it would then go to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for final approval. All project information, including task reports. Now, each task that we have completed, there is a report associated with that, with findings. Those are all available at leoncountyfl.gov/wastewater, as well as contact information for some of the project leads and information as to how to submit comments or questions. So at this point, I would open it up for any questions or comments.
We don't have a chat feature, so just go ahead and unmute yourself and give us a comment.
Hey, Tony, this is Mike Alfano from Blueprint. I just wanted to confirm that 33,353 pounds a year additionally identified. That's just in Leon County, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
That is just in Leon County, and that is only including parcels outside of the PFA.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Sophie Wakonia-Spear. I've been trying to find the tax 6 report, but on the page where all the pictures for task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are located, the link for task 6 keeps giving me task 1.
Oh, that's not good.
No.
We will get that fixed. And Sophie, I think I have your email, so I'll let you know as soon as we
Thank
get
you.
it fixed. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
No problem.
Anybody else?
Well, if I can ask another question.
Yes.
course.
Please.
Not having had the report under my eyes, can you give us again what the target, the nitrogen load reduction for the whole PFA? What's the target goal from DEP?
I think it's, Marcy, do you have that value in front of you? I don't have it in front of me.
I'm pulling up the report
Okay.
as we speak. So what DEP did is they calculated a high end and a low end. So the high end was if all of the septic systems within both priority focus areas, there's actually 2, Leon County is only part of 1, were connected to sewer. And then the low end was if everything was connected to just upgraded systems. And so I was trying to kill time while I scrolled, but Give me just a second.
While Marcy's looking for that, Sophie, we'll get
Mhm.
that updated right away. And once you have a chance to look at it, as Tony said, we're accepting comments through next week. So
Thank you.
you can email those to Marcy
Yeah.
and myself, and our emails are on that website.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
so DEP had the full range. So if there was almost 12,000 septic systems in both priority focus areas. It was about 77,000 pounds to almost 113,000 pounds. And as Tony mentioned, the county has about 2,400 septic systems in PFA1. So that's about 20% of that 12,000. And so we were aiming for 20% of that range. So that put us between 15,005 and 22,005. And we were at
17.5 roughly.
17.5. So we were in the middle of that range.
Okay, thank you. I guess my last question is, are there discussions with Wakulla County to see how much they expect to be able to do?
So as part of the Wakulla BMAP, every county had to do a facilities plan similar to this. So
Mhm.
Wakulla County has, they have already done their facilities plan. I know it has went through their board for approval. And I think it has been submitted to DEP. I'm not positive if it has made it through DEP yet, but it has been submitted to DEP. And when we selected the 20% criteria, we did have initial discussions with DEP about utilizing that value. And they appeared to be on board at that time. So I think that us meeting that 20% value and staying, within that range about midway, this plan should be sufficient to meet the requirements of DEP.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Hello, Tony and Anna.
Yes,
Hi, this is Rick Miner. I just wanted to thank the two of you and Marcy, Charles, everybody from doing the work on this and all the citizens that have participated today. Sophie, it's good to hear from you. I just wanted to thank everybody for doing this today. I appreciate it.
thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
look forward to seeing this on the county agenda and then blueprint.
Yes, it will be there soon.
Anybody else? Any last call? And as I mentioned, if you get off the call and think of something, you can go to the, leoncountyfl.gov/wastewater. The comment form is on there, and there's Marcy and my emails are on there as well. So we're accepting through next week. Well, hearing nothing else, that is all we have. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you
all
very
for
much.
attending.
Thank you all.
Thank you.